Plug and Pay, a talk show where we bring you the latest and greatest of global payroll. I'm Angelique, Payzar's head of content, and I'm here with Max, our head of service delivery. And today is a very special episode because we just got back from our Global Payroll networking event in the lovely city of Warsaw. So Max, how are you doing? Are you still on a buzz, on a high from the event? I know I definitely am.
Yeah, no, me too. It was great to be back in Poland. For me, the first time in Warsaw. I've been to Krakow many times, but it's been wonderful. The people welcomed us with open arms, and I think we threw a hell of a global payroll networking event with great speakers, international speakers, with a lot of engaged attendees. There was laughs, there were light bubbles going up, but people opening their eyes from insights from others, and nice drinks. But now I'm back to reality in beautiful Netherlands, where it's raining, cloudy, dark, but the bus is still there. Yes, thanks, Angelique.
I'm glad. Yeah, it was a great time. And actually, speaking of the weather, we had lovely sun over there, so it was just smiles all around, really.
Yes.
And speaking of our international speakers, you were one of them. So you did a couple of presentations, and one of them that I'm very excited about is the sneak peek you gave to the audience of our global payroll industry report. So this is something that if you're on our LinkedIn, our Payzar LinkedIn page, you'll be hearing about, because we've been writing this report. We've been working on it for, well, about 6 months now. And we've got insights from partners, consultants, customers, friends, you guys from LinkedIn. I know you, Max, have been running a series of polls over on your LinkedIn page, and many of our Plug and Pay listeners have actually contributed to those. So thank you all again for keeping engaged with those polls and making this industry report happen. So I'm going to just give you a little sneak peek of it here.
Oh, wow.
Very
That was
nice.
printed version.
It's even got
exactly. Listening to the podcast, Angelique's now holding up an actual printed version of the Global Payroll Insights from Payzar. So it looks beautiful.
Exactly. And you can actually get yourself a copy of these, of the report. If you pop over to our LinkedIn and you send us a direct message, you can actually get one for yourself, free of charge. So yeah, Max, since you are one of the main people working on this, can you share some of your main takeaways from the report?
Yes, of course. But first of all, when I was prepping for the episode, I was reviewing my bucket list. And my personal bucket list actually had an industry report on it, Angelique. Well, others might say, I want to travel the world, or I want to go here, there, and still do this, or bungee jump, or jump out of an aircraft. For me, it was actually working on an industry report, because behind me, actually, if people watching the video, is all kinds of printed reports. I love to print it and have these little post-its on it to then mark whatever was insightful. And I always thought, geez, if I would ever be in a position to write or co-write an industry report, that would really, really be awesome. And now we're here and we're about to release it. So it's really great.
Dreams do come true.
Yeah, it's a dream come true. Exactly. I need to include other stuff on my bucket list now. Anyways, on the industry report, make sure you grab your hard or soft copy just by contacting us or looking on the website. So much in line with how we presented it in Warsaw, I want to tell a little story through the benchmarking and the comments we've included in the report. So what we've identified is that on average, 65% of global processes have 5 or more data sources per country and per payroll cycle. So that means that most of you are processing 5 or more data sources per country, per payroll. Now that's a lot of data that needs to be validated, received, processed, and then transformed by the payroll teams to either be processed by their payroll providers or in their in-house payroll engines. And interestingly enough, we also ran a poll on the main root causes of payroll errors. And not surprisingly, that's either poor data quality or manual processing of data, still in 2024. And to add to the point, 89% of payroll teams still process changes after cutoff. So when I was prepping for the talk, this kind of builds a storyline. We have a lot of data, The main root cause of payroll errors and therefore stress and therefore deteriorated employee experience is poor data and the manual processing of data. And we still allow, I always say we, because at heart I'm still a global payroll manager. So we still allow changes after cutoff. So that in itself tells us a lot. And we can't always fix the many data sources, but how they are processed and how they are validated and transformed, that's something we have in our control. And we also ran a poll on the top priority for 2024, and that's actually automating inbound and outbound data flows. So it means that most of the global payroll leaders out there recognize that there is an issue on the inbound and outbound data points. And we now have some benchmarking for you to back that up and build your case for change. And Trevor also had a speech. Trevor is our COO and one of the co-founders of Payzar, and he talked about microservices. Which is great because we had a customer, Remy from the Known, who has a very big scope. He also helped solve these issues through microservices. Now, what are microservices? It's basically being very targeted to have a solution for a specific challenge, which could be your data sources that flow in or a specific data source. Now, instead of traditionally moving all your payroll providers and kind of ripping and replacing your whole landscape, you could also just solve that specific problem. And if you look at solving specific problems, it's typically related to how you would design your global payroll strategy. And I think one of the other polls we had a benchmark on is that 80% either indicated to already have a global payroll strategy or they are working on it. Well, if you have one, you've established your guidelines and your service delivery models. If you're working on it, you're still doing that. So just make sure that you consider how you balance those insights from the data sources, the root causes of errors, and how you would balance standardization and flexibility. Standardization to drive efficiency and scalability, but flexibility to choose the best payroll services, service levels to the specific markets or regions. As 60% indicated that both standardization and equalization are important. And we now have all the data to back it up. So I would say if you're a payroll geek like me, you have to get the report. You either print it yourself or ask us for a hard copy so you can start redlining it, building your business case for change, and in the end, end up at Payzar.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you mentioned some of the main takeaways there, but there's so much data in here as well. There's just so much. I think we've got around 50 pages of good stuff to go through. So definitely pop over to our LinkedIn, download the digital version, or message us for a copy. Now, other than the exciting news of the industry report, you also did another presentation. So for those following our Payzar on the Go events, you may know our friend Fred. And you, Max, told the third chapter of Fred's story in Warsaw. So for those who don't yet know the lovely Fred, can you give a quick introduction about him and also what does he signify for Payzar?
Yeah, so I remember one night after a couple of glasses of red wine on a Friday, I started thinking about how relatable we are as global payroll managers or payroll specialists or leaders when we come together at an event or when we just collaborate over a Zoom call. It feels like it's so easy to talk to each other because you know each other. This led me to create a character called Fred. Now, some debate that Fred is an alter ego of me. Some debate he's just a made-up person. Even debate he actually exists. I'm not gonna bring any clarity here. What I just want the audience to know is that Fred is the payroll manager that we can relate to. He goes through the same struggles as we do. He has the same highs and lows as a payroll manager. And what I hope it does through the storytelling I try to do at the events, but also online, is to make global payroll visible. As that is one of the trends you see, we need to be visible, to be recognized, to either get a seat at the table or just get funded through our processes. And I hope through Fred that we might even at some point, Angelique, make a comic book of, but that's maybe further down the line.
That is something we've spoken about.
Exactly, to just have someone to relate to. And he comes into all sorts of troubles and situations where everyone listening has also been in. So I'm not going to spoil it because I believe we'll also have a clip of Fred's story, right?
That's right, yes. So if you're ready for the full chapter 3, I'm going to hand over to Max and Fred now.
He's a global payroll manager of a manufacturing company of around 20,000 employees across 35 countries, and he manages a team of 8. And Fred has a story. And we launched Fred in Amsterdam in October, and his first chapter was where Fred was thinking about his current state, maybe much like you, and he wanted to make a change because he was no longer accepting the long hours. He was no longer accepting the argument of the local teams that they are too special to standardize, that they truly are uniquely different than the rest, that they can't go into the global model. He is done with spreadsheets and tying everything together, as what Trevor alluded to. There were too many spreadsheets out there. He also didn't believe the story of many other global payroll providers to say, this is the one size fits all. If you would choose us, all your problems would go away. There's only one provider that really does that. That's, I think you could guess who that is, right? It's ADP. No, it's not ADP. No, it's not ADP. No, it's Payzar. So he kind of has his wall between where he is and where he wants to go. So Fred, he's unlike me, he's really muscular, he's really a guy, he broke through his paradigm, and he said, no more. I'm dealing no more with this SHIT. I am changing my own life and of my team. And he basically said, I'm not accepting the status quo anymore. So he is like a Sylvia and a Paul who really went up there and says, I'm going to do everything different. Right? But then he actually needs to start doing it. So then we move to chapter 2, where Fred just moves on with business as usual. And do you know the term, everybody's equal, but some are more equal? Yeah. Okay. That's also the theme in payroll. Everybody's equal, but some are more equal. So is also Mary. Mary is the general manager of the main manufacturing site in Deutschland. So in Germany. And Mary always works. And you know, you use chat function, maybe Zoom chat or Slack or Teams. Mm-hmm. And you notice that one of these people is online all the time. Mary is one of those persons that's online all the time. And she has a practice of she does one word, send. One word, send. And the notifications keep popping up. You know those people? Just like how Trevor does it on Slack. But I love you, Trevor. But I turned off notifications because of that. But you're a great guy. So Mary just sends the messages. And Fred is working late at night as we normally do. The kids are asleep. His wife starts watching Netflix. He opens up the laptop to do the last emails. He gets a message from Mary, not one, but just like the Mary messages. I need my payslip. I need it right now. Just like everybody else. Well, you do. You have an employee self-portal. Anyway, that doesn't work. He gets a 404 error, needs to go to tickets, to approvals. It doesn't work. So he calls up Peter, the local payroll provider, says, Peter, you need to send me the payslip of Mary because Mary needs it. And Mary is not like anyone else because Mary is unique. At least that's what Mary thinks she is. So Peter says, sure, it's a great German local payroll provider. Peter then sends an email to Fred. So Fred keeps on working, refreshes his inbox. There's no email. There's no email. And well, of course, Mary keeps on chatting. So Fred calls Peter again. Peter, you should have sent me that payslip. I did this morning. To the wrong Fred.
Oh no.
So anyone in doubt for employee portal, go check with Mark and Trevor. Because Peter, the local payroll provider, sent it to the wrong Fred. And yes, also the password, which was of course sent in a reply to that same email with a password to the wrong Fred. So now Mary she's not chatting, she's but not to Fred, no, to the CEO. Because Mary truly believes she's unique. So she escalates this data breach over to the CEO. So Fred in chapter 1 was like, yeah. That's really sad. Sometimes we have those as well. We wake up in the morning, we feel like, yes, you start your email. So this is Fred. So now we find ourselves with Fred who is truly unhappy, still wanted to change his status quo, but he's now faced with a data breach. What happens if there's a data breach? You get audited. So Fred is under a full internal audit. Who has ever been in a full internal audit? Okay. You have never been audited before? Really? Wow. Really? Never? Okay. Never? Okay. So Fred is under audit and he needs to do a walkthrough. So I presume you never had a walkthrough either than an auditor because you've never been under audit. Who's done a walkthrough with an auditor? That side of it. Yes. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Walkthroughs with auditors are terrible. For once. Look at these faces. They are just out there to catch you. Yeah? They start immediately think, I have a cup of coffee, I'm going to find all the anomalies of Fred's processes. So he has a walkthrough 3 hours, a 2-minute bio break. Awesome. Fred keeps on chatting. And Fred starts to notice with the level of questioning that it's not going the right way. Everyone who's been in an audit, you feel like through the audit, just like a job interview, this is not going the right way. I don't have the right answers. They ask me all kinds of questions I don't have answers to. So Fred's unhappy. Because now he receives the PBC, the provided by client list. Have you ever received a long list after a walkthrough when you've sent them information, you've given them all the information, they tweak their little list to say, let me ask a few things that Fred already said he doesn't have. So, Fred said he doesn't have it. They include it in the list that Fred needs to provide. Auditors. Is there an auditor in the room, by the way? Okay, great. Auditors. C'est terrible. So don't do auditors. So what Fred also notices, he gets a request for pay slips. He gets a request for these stuff. What? Is that the right pronunciation? Yes! Okay, that's right. And then he gets a request for process documentation. Who has all the flowcharts up to date? Who has all the checklists up to date? All the standard operating procedures? Everyone, right? Because you've never been under audit. So for you, go for a best practice. Go to this side of the table. Yeah? They have process documentations, checklists. This is like amazing. Fred, on the other hand, is unhappy because he now also needs to request the data. So Fred uses another dollar, please. In some countries, he wants to change another dollar. Anyway, it's an inside joke. And so he needs to provide all of this within 1 week. The auditors always give like a deadline of 1 week in the middle of payroll. These guys have no idea what is, or maybe worse, they know and they still do it. Auditors. They're not my friends. My brother's an auditor, by the way. So he needs to request all the information from the people. And although he had a data breach, of course, the auditors just send an Excel spreadsheet over email, not password protected, right? So he's on an audit because of a data breach. So he now sends a secure Google Drive to all the local payroll providers. What happens? I can't access it. I'm a Microsoft Teams. I'm a Microsoft. Okay, doesn't work. He, of course, can't ask them to email it because he's under audit because of a data breach. So he needs to log into all kinds of different portals to get the data. 3 weeks later, he gets the data. Fred looks like this now. He saw the strong, masculine man. This is now Fred. He received a walkthrough provided by client. He's truly unhappy because he realizes he doesn't really have all the data. Okay, 3 weeks later, he delivers the data. The auditors, of course, take 3 months to then think about the report. He gets a question, always piecemeal, never like, okay, we've gone through it. Let's set up another call. It's most efficient for all of us. No, the junior associate just graduated from school, knows nothing about business, let alone payroll, asks the questions. The best question that Fred has ever been asked by the junior associate is, why have you paid more than is in your GTM? Anyone know the answer? Because there's an overpayment. It's a minus amount, so you pay more. You're like, oh shit. The level of questioning. But now he actually gets the report. Well, as you can imagine, the report is terrible. Fred is now in this state. Fred is on the couch, crying, trying to get out of payroll. He hates auditors. He doesn't want to do anything anymore. Well, in October, when he first aired, he was going to change the world. He was going to break through walls, change everything. Now he is here. Fred is really unhappy. He received a poor rating with all kinds of audit findings. Who's ever had a bad rating with audit findings? Of course, nobody raises.
It's not that.
No, they've never been on audit, and you only had successful audits. It's really good. Like, we're open, transparent conversations. It's really realistic. Thanks, guys. We're sharing everything. You're like, I'm not sharing shit. Okay, great. So, what everybody does when they're down, you go to your spouses or your cat or your dog, and you have a good chat with, in this case, Fred's wife. So they have a little bit of a red wine. And then Fred starts venting. Or if your spouse is vent, you're like, heard this story all day long, right? So Fred vents to his wife and vents all day long. My processes are bad. Everything is poor. And then his wife says at some point, but if you could maybe turn this around into something positive. Maybe the audit results could build your business case for your case of change. Would that maybe be a good idea? And then, what he says then, dziękuję moja droga. It's like, come on. So I'm not a good answer. But I have other qualities, payroll. So Fred is happy because Fred is going to change the world. He also attended a webinar of Pesar on how to build a business case. The recording is on YouTube, by the way, which will be sent in a follow-up call along with the slides. So if you, like Fred, need to make a business case, we have you covered. So Fred goes out and makes a business case. He also talked to Paul. He talked to Sylvia how to deliver with brand awareness. He talked to Trevor to learn. Well, he also talked to Trevor. Sorry, Trevor. But he does it very successfully. Of course, he needs to go to a road show. He needs to go to HR, legal, finance. Everybody wants to understand the business case. And then he submits the business case. Right? How quick Mary was with escalating to the CEO to audit. He again waits for a long time. This is what Fred looks like now. Fred is waiting for an approval of his business case. Anyone ever, I know your answer is no. Anybody waited for like a business case approval? You ever had that?
Oh.
Yeah? Refresh, like an exam result, right? It hurts, F3. So Fred also works, but at some point, he does get the email. So he's now going to know what the result is of his business case. And for that, you need to join us the next time.
Wow, Max, what a cliffhanger. You are really... Indeed, that is the ending that Fred's story deserves. Because you left us wondering what is going to happen to poor Fred now. So we have to wait until the next installment. So that will actually be on our next Pesar on the Go event in Dublin in June. So you're going to make us wait until June to find out what happens next.
Correct.
But before we find out about chapter 4, I wanted to ask you, Max, after the wonderful event that we had, what were your key takeaways, not just from Fred's story, but also from the other great talks we had from our other guest speakers? I know that you actually wrote an article with some of the insights and key takeaways from the event. And I wondered if you could just talk us through some of those key points that you mentioned in your blog post.
Yeah, of course. I even remember writing it, I think, in the lobby of the airport in Warsaw, and then completing it while in the plane being squeezed to two other people who had no clue what I was doing, but I was doing the write-up. It's always the best thing to do it right after an event. Pass it on to you, Angelique, and then you make it all pretty and flow. Yeah, it was
which I also did in the airport too.
Exactly.
So this was definitely on the go.
Make best use of our time. But I also, so I did 2 talks myself, but I really loved listening to the other people there and engaging with everyone, because you're never too old to learn, as they say. And if you think you know it all, you'll never open up your ears to others. So I really love the starting session that I think Paul Simpson did, the Senior Director of Payroll and Operations, People Operations at Ralph Lauren, and Sylvia Corona, of course, our beloved friend from Warsaw itself, the Associate Director of Global Payroll Transformation at Fresenius Medical Care. And while they had a lot to share, so this short summary won't do justice to what they shared. For me, the key takeaway was much in line with how Fred tries to make the profession of payroll visible, is also that they shared how to change the perception of payroll, which almost reads like a management book, right? That you first need to understand your company's objectives and mission. What's the company all about? And how does that then relate to the people agenda or the finance and compliance agenda? And from there, you would want to detail how can global payroll make a meaningful difference? And once you've identified that, then you should act on it. And that part is crucial because a lot of payroll professionals, they do like to be invisible. Actually, they put on the stealth mode. But if we want to have support for a case for change or do something, we need to remove the stealth mode and just get out there and be visible, which means you'll need to talk to stakeholders, you need to talk to employees. And the example Paul gave is that they actually identified that it was very important to either to be visible to the employees. So they had like breakfast sessions and those type of sessions for the people to walk in, because he has a lot of retail people, and the main reason that they come to work, perhaps like most of us, is getting paid, and also understanding how it would get paid. And that level of visibility and accessibility of payroll meant that they suddenly became visible and became part of that employee experience. And the other thing was, because a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, they introduced early or earned wage access, which actually was recognized by the CEO in a town hall talk recognizing payroll. So I think there's a lot of debate of payroll here, payroll there. Payroll just needs to be visible, but the only people who can make payroll visible are actually ourselves. So that was Paul's and I think Sylvia's call to action, which I would want to just share with the audience as well. Then we had our friend Trevor Townsend. I think I mentioned he's a CEO, COO and the co-founder at Payzar, sharing his unique perspective on the tech trends and what they can do for us. And there's just two quotes that I want the listeners to really take in. One is, a hammer can't change every challenge into a nail. Which means we have AI, we have machine learning, we have new payroll providers having the best sales pitches ever, but it doesn't mean that everything out there actually solves your challenges. So don't just think like we did with RPA or with automation or with APIs, that suddenly solves all your problems. And he related that to the microservices. So you'll need to make sure you actually use the right hammer and turn a challenge into a nail, and then actually you can hammer it down. And the other thing he shared in line with the microservices, that he wants to move away from a monolithic system of, deploy everything and let's see how far we get, very long disruptive transformation projects, to let's do it with a smaller scope, more targeted, solve the actual challenge at lower cost and less disruption. I think that was great from our very own Trevor. Then, yeah, guys, by now you should join our events, right? You get all this for free in a lovely environment,
exactly,
with a few drinks, and we can shake hands. This is awesome. This has not been here since I started in payroll in 2006. So the last thing is we had our valued customer, Remy Champé, the lead global payroll transformation at Danone, of course, a very well-known dairy company, and they probably do much more. But his takeaway was, and I might tattoo this on my chest at some point, because I truly believe in it and I've been advocating it for years, is that hybrid is the only one size fits all. And he does it with Payzar. So he shared a very simple yet effective view of his landscape, saying the larger countries, which arguably was above 1,500 employees, he wanted to make sure he has top-tier suppliers who have a global presence and a good platform that he can integrate to directly. However, he also deployed two of our modules, which is the reporting analytics module and the accounting connect module. And the reporting analytics module makes sure that they have instant access to self-service global payroll reporting. And accounting connect means he can drive accounting integrations into his finance ERP, regardless of which provider. Then he has his medium to small countries, arguably less than 1,500, where he deploys the full range of the Payzar modules while keeping the local payroll providers. Now, why is that so important? Because he has what we would call a transnational business model, which means there is a strong push from global around standards and governance, but there is a strong pull from local to say, I'm still my own business unit. I still want to make my own decisions, which is kind of this paradigm that we talk about a lot, flexibility, standardization, right? So he now found a way to be less disruptive, to say, yes, you could still choose your vendors if they comply with X, Y, Z, but we will still be implementing our standards around how we connect with data, either through automation, drag and drop, or even manual entry, right? If you have a couple of employees in a country, there isn't a lot of changes. And they also deploy the reporting analytics to make sure across the entire scope, regardless of how you deliver payroll, you still have consistent reporting. So I think there was a very powerful story shared by Remy, and a lot of global payroll managers there jumped on Remy to hear his story and hear how he has done it. So yeah, those were kind of the key insights for me. And maybe the last one, Angelique, is that just payroll is so much fun, right?
Oh yeah, that one we already know.
Well, but the people listening who are cracking the numbers, is the time of recording is the 17th of April. People will have submitted their payrolls. They're waiting for the reviews. But if you get a bunch of payroll people together, it's really a unique party.
Yes, I can definitely say that. Being much newer to the global payroll world, I can definitely say I know how to have fun. Definitely. So yeah, thank you for sharing those with us, Max. And if you listeners would like to read more about it, you can head over to our blog and actually read Max's full article, which goes into even more detail. And I think that's it from me. So is there anything else you want to add, Max? Any final comments?
Yeah, I think you also thanked everyone listening and participating in the polls on LinkedIn and commenting and engaging with us. I think the industry report often is a report made from one perspective. I think what we've tried to do is combine everything and be as objective as we can. Of course, we're still relating it to our own business model, but we've tried to give a lot of benchmarks, comments, and insights by payroll professionals for payroll professionals. So I do really hope everyone enjoys reading it. And make sure to contact us to discuss the results and how they may apply to you. And thank you, Angelique, for being the driver at the event in Warsaw. We could not have done it without you. So Dublin, be ready for a Payzar on the Go Roadshow. And everyone listening, Dublin is just a flight or a train drive away. And if you're in Dublin, you would be a fool not to join us. We'll be sending you invites in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, and we can't wait to see you there. So yes, that's a wrap for this episode of Plug and Pay. Thanks again for joining us. We will be releasing a new episode every 2 weeks on all the usual platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and also over on our YouTube channel. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks, everyone.